All right, guys. So, last video we talked about Declaration of Independence. We talked about the new government after the Revolutionary War, and how there really wasn't one. So now we're going to talk about the first attempt at creating a United States government, and that's called the Articles of Confederation. So, my computer's not working. Sorry. So after this violent breakup between Great Britain and the United States, there was continued aggression from the British and their Native American allies. So if you haven't caught the drift of this yet, the European powers really like to pay the Native Americans to fight their wars in other countries. The colonies decided that, hey, if they're going to stay in our backyard, we should probably unite and do something about this. So, wanted a just right government. So they don't want it to be too powerful like the British government was, where there was no representation for them in government. They also didn't want it to be too loose because they needed it to protect them. So they want a government that has enough power to do its job, but doesn't give any one person too much power, considers everybody's needs, give everybody a say, and protect individual rights. Individual rights are a huge deal. We're talking about the United States government. So 1777, we write. It was kind of a rough draft because obviously in 1777 the war is not even over yet. They make this rough draft called the Articles of Confederation. They fight the American Revolution, and this is the only plan that they have in place. And they say, "Oh well, I guess we'll try this." So, Confederation is a group of individuals that unite together for a common purpose, which is what the colonies were at the time, right? They just fought this big war. They wanted to be independent of the British crown, and so they were a confederation. Not to be confused, this is small c confederation, not capital C confederation, like the Confederate States of America from the 1850s and 1860s. Not what we're talking about. I don't like my camera angle. Hey, there we go. So, the Articles of Confederation. Each state was independent and had its own government, which we still kind of have today, right? Like we have a legislative, executive, and judicial branch in the state of Ohio. However, these were almost completely sovereign states away from the United States federal government. Each state would send representatives to the Congress of the Confederation. So here we're seeing this representative government come in. Congress was the only central government. So the legislative branch was the only form of central government. There was no president. So it's not the American Revolution and, oh, cool, George Washington's president. That's not what happened. In Congress, each state got one vote. One. That's this many. So, what were all the awesome things about the Articles of Confederation? States get to keep their power that they had fought for and their independence that they had fought for. They didn't have this big, overbearing government telling them what to do. And Congress had the power to create a military to protect the states if they needed to. But it wasn't a standing army. Like, it wasn't like it is today where we go into the recruiter's office and say, hey, I'd like to join your army. It was, hey, guys, there's a problem, so now we need an army. There was no standing army. So what were some of the problems? So Congress had no way to enforce its laws. Okay, so Congress had no way. They could pass all the laws they want, but if you didn't want to follow them as an individual, they really couldn't do anything to you. Congress had no way to collect taxes, to fund a military, or pay back their debts from the war, because after the American Revolution, we owed a lot of money to the French. We owed a lot of money to soldiers that we said we were going to pay. And that became an issue. And the Articles of Confederation could only be changed if all 13 states agreed at the same time. Most of the time in my household, there are 3 people, me, my wife, my son, and we can't even agree what we want for dinner. So imagine trying to get 13 politicians to agree on one thing that's going to affect everybody. It's not going to happen. We're not going to worry about this quick quiz section. This is something that we do in class. If you're really interested, you can go on Classroom and do this on your own. It's a little checkpoint. You can see me, Bob, and weave. Here we go. Nope, still not it. Oh, here we go. A new idea. Block my haters out. So, in the Articles of Confederation, you have one branch. It's the legislative branch. It's making the laws. This new idea they come up with, this federal system, this republic system that they come up with, has 3 branches. The executive branch, legislative branch, the judicial branch. And all three of those branches serve a pretty big purpose. We're going to talk about them here in a second. But we need to figure out how the legislative branch was going to work and how the individual people, the me's and you's of these new United States, were going to be represented in government. Now, people were very, very proud of their states back then because that's the way we operated during the Revolution. If you were from Virginia or Georgia or New Jersey or New York, you were proud of that and you fought for that state. You weren't necessarily fighting for an entire free United States. You were fighting for a free Virginia or New York or Georgia or what have you. So this guy from Virginia submitted a plan to the Congress called the Virginia Plan, super original, where the legislative branch has two chambers. This is called bicameral, bicameral, bicameral. It means there's two. If you ride a bicycle, you're on two wheels. If you're in a bicameral legislature, it's a two-chamber legislature. The number of the votes, what this guy from Virginia wanted, was based on the population of the state. That's how many votes you would get proportionately in Congress, which sounds great if you're a huge state like Virginia at the time. But if you are a really, really small state like New Jersey, this is a terrible plan for you because you're not going to get as much representation in Congress as Virginia. Larger states would have more power under the Virginia plan. So if you want the bigger states making all the decisions for every state, you would side with the Virginia plan. And people from Virginia love this plan because they're like, hey, we can pretty much run the government. And that was kind of a no-no. That's what we were looking to avoid. So this guy from New Jersey submitted another super original plan called the New Jersey Plan, where the legislative branch only had one chamber, unicameral, unicameral, and each state got one vote. And this would mean that the smaller states had kind of taken away the voice of some of these more populated states, I guess you would say. And even though that sounds more fair, it actually takes some of that power away, because what's the point in participating in government in Virginia if your voice doesn't really matter, right? So we had to kind of figure something out. So there's a solution. We're going to stick with that bicameral legislature that we found in the Virginia plan, okay? But we're going to split it up between the two plans. So in the Senate, each state is going to get 2 votes. Each state gets 2 votes, regardless of population size. So now this dude in New Jersey is happy because we took that from his plan. In the House of Representatives, the bigger house, the common house, the more people the state has, the more votes they will get. So if you think about 2019 United States, if you think about our most populous states like California, Texas, New York, those states have more power in the House of Representatives. There are more representatives from those states in the House. But in the Senate, it's an even playing field. It doesn't matter if you're from North Dakota, Idaho, Ohio, or California, you only get 2 votes. So when a law is passed, it has to go through both houses, both chambers of Congress. So if it's a law that's only going to benefit the people of New York, the Senate will axe that thing, because if everyone in the delegation from New York in the House of Representatives says, oh, this is an awesome law, we should pass it, and they convince enough people to do it, if the Senate says, no, that's not really fair, then it dies, and there's no unfair way to pass a law at the federal level. So that's kind of cool. I think it's cool. So we already talked about buying Congress in 2. We're not going to worry about this quick quiz. Let's just go ahead and go. Oh, nope, we're going to keep going. You want me to bob my head some more. Pretty neat. Take time to do this on your own on the slides in classroom, please. So the achievements of the Articles of Confederation. These are pretty cool. Articles were not a complete failure. The first thing is that the Articles of Confederation, this government that was set up, was the one to sign a treaty with Britain to end the war for independence. So that was kind of cool. The second thing is the Northwest Ordinance of 1787, which is a piece of legislation that describes how new states can be added to the United States. So the reason why it's the Northwest Ordinance is because in the northwest section of the territory, think Ohio Indiana, Michigan, Minnesota, those kind of places. That was the Northwest Territory at the time. Um, it was how to make them states. So basically, between the Appalachian Mountains and the Mississippi River, how are we going to make them official states in the United States and like kind of keep the British out was one of the goals there. Here's some important vocabulary that you need to talk about. The one that we haven't really talked about yet that I love, and I kid you not, this vocab word shows up on every single test that you will take in this class, is the word federalism. It's that third one down. And that's the division of power between the three levels of federal government. Or I'm sorry, it's division of three levels of government, period. It's the federal government, the state government, and the local government. So each one of those levels has its own unique power that the other two doesn't have. And that's very important when we're talking about the American government, but we'll get to that later. Take note of these vocab on the slides in classroom. Remember, if it's capitalized and underlined, it's fair game for a quiz or a test. And that's all I have for you guys here.